I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and this is the Dan Clark Audio E3. This is a headphone that I've actually not had as much time with this headphone as I typically do for a review of a headphone. Basically, I'm a friend of the channel, Scott Pledger. I reached out to him asking if I could borrow this headphone because I was recently reviewing the Meze Audio Lyric 2, which is a closed back planar, $2,000, same exact sort of situation here as the E3. And I figured I needed to compare them. I knew that Scott had them. Scott was nice enough to loan them to me. Now, before I mail this out back to Scott, I did want to just kind of do a little quick dirty video telling you how much I like the E3 because I, to be honest, did not have super high expectations for this headphone. I've heard Dan Clark's other premium planar headphones. In fact, Scott sent them in for comparison here. I've got the Expanse, $4,000, as well as the Stealth, also $4,000. And I've heard those headphones before at Can Jam in Southern California. And I'll be honest, I don't love them that much. But the E3, this guy I love. And yeah, well, let's just talk about why. So we'll do kind of a quick review and start with the build quality, the physical stuff. And that is probably both the best, not the best, one of the better and the worst aspects of this headphone. Okay, build quality materials and stuff in this thing are fantastic. Like, it's just got nice premium materials all the way around. I love the way that Dan Clark does these headbands. Very minimal with these little steel arms, or I don't even know how he's doing these, aluminum arms with these steel bands here that connect them. I don't understand how this works, but it does actually hold the headphone together surprisingly well. Of course, your head doesn't actually hit these metal bands, which is good. Instead, you run into this suspension strap, which generally I think distributes the weight quite well. And it's not an especially heavy headphone, even though it is got some really large planar drivers in there. Weight-wise, this thing's actually really, frankly, pretty lightweight. The other benefit of this little headband mechanism is that it does actually fold up, which is kind of cool. Makes this a little bit more portable, a lot more portable than your average headphone. And it also lets it fit into this little carry case that it comes with, which is super compact. Look at that. That's like smaller than the carry case that you get with like a Sony XM5 or something like that. Really pretty impressive. Now, I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the most portable headphone apart from the fact that it's really compact. Like, this is the cable that it comes with, which is pretty beefy. It's like a 5-foot cable. This one terminates in a 6.3 mil. There's another version of this cable that I've got that terminates in an XLR connector. Obviously, neither of those are really made for portable sources, but, and we'll talk about drivability. This thing does need some juice to drive. But nonetheless, I am impressed with the engineering on this guy. Now, I will say I am less impressed with the aesthetics of the E3. I don't think this is the most attractive headphone out there. I don't think it's Dan Clark's most attractive headphone. In fact, I would say this is probably the least attractive headphone I've seen come out of Dan Clark, and mostly it just really does come down to this honeycomb pattern here on the outside. It is behind glass, which is kind of a cool effect. In fact, they advertise this as being Gorilla Glass, which is interesting, but I don't know. It doesn't make me love it anymore. I think also I don't like the blue text that is really hard to read up against this gray honeycomb. I don't know. Don't dig it that much. The embroidery here on the top, I think that is actually a nice touch. This frankly looks like something you'd see in an expensive car. And you've got even more of that embroidery here on the bottom of the headband. So I don't know, some things to love about the build quality for sure. Some things to even love about the aesthetics of it, but also some things that I'm not a big fan of. Now, in terms of comfort, I'll do a quick fit demonstration. This is a closed back headphone, so as I put it on my head, isolation is pretty strong and I can't hear myself very well, which is both a good thing and a bad thing depending on how you're planning to use this thing. I wouldn't use this for video calls. In fact, I have not. But if you're taking it on a plane or something like that, you'll probably appreciate the isolation. And you might also notice it collects fingerprints because of that big glass pad. The other thing to mention about the fit is that it does have like a decent clamp to it, but I don't know. I don't find this clamp to be uncomfortable at all. The pads are nice and roomy. We're on the wrong camera right there. The pads are nice and roomy, sort of front to back, top to bottom. And even in terms of depth, I'll give you a quick view on the depth of these pads. It is a little bit shallower in the front than it is in the back, like double depth in the back. but in either case, either place, my ears fit quite well. So yeah, generally dig the build on this headphone, as I do with Dan Clark's other stuff. I do wish that it was maybe a little bit more attractive, but maybe a small complaint, maybe a big complaint, depending on who you are. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the sound here on the Dan Clark Audio E3. And that's, frankly, as much as I like the build on this, that is almost the same build as you get on the other Dan Clark headphones, which again, I said, I didn't love them. So what I do love about the E3 is the sound. And it was frankly surprising to me because again, like I didn't love, in fact, I kind of disliked the Stealth. I think the Stealth is not a very good headphone, would be kind of my short version of it. And so I didn't have especially high expectations of this being a closed back headphone, being half the price of the Stealth. You would expect it to sound worse. In my opinion, this thing sounds like 5 times better than the Stealth. And it really does come down to the image separation, which this thing does outstanding job of for a closed back headphone, and maybe even remove the for a closed back headphone. This thing just has really strong imaging separation between sounds and clarity. There's none of that weird boxiness, muffliness, or congestedness that I usually expect from a closed back headphone. And that's kind of been the reason this headphone really does impress me. Now, in terms of tuning, it might not be the headphone for everybody. For me, it is. I love the way that this thing is tuned because it's very much a vocal focused tuning. If you've heard something like an Etymotic ER4S, this to me kind of reminds me of an ER4S. This has more bass than an ER4S for sure, but in terms of the way that it puts vocals forward and really does just draw attention to the vocals and also pull out the micro contrast and texturing in vocals without being strident at all in the treble, that is what this headphone does really well, and that is what just keeps me wanting to come back and listen to the E3. It is really pretty fantastic. The bass on this is not bad. I'd say it's maybe a little bit soft in its attack. If you're looking for the most exciting, strongly defined bass, I think something like the Meze Audio Lyric does actually a better job than the E3. But the bass in the E3, I would say, is satisfying. Like there's plenty of amounts of it. And again, we'll pull up the graphs as I compare this with the other headphones in a little bit. But yeah, just to say that I'd say the bass quality on this guy is okay. Really where this thing stands out is, again, in that vocal presentation, that mid-range presentation, and just the quality and smoothness of the treble while maintaining much better than average separation between sounds and doing it all in a closed back package, which frankly, I find pretty impressive. So, anything else I need to talk about? I don't think so. Let's go ahead and pull in these other headphones and we'll pull up some graphs and do a bit of comparison. In fact, let me start with the Stealth, okay? So this is Dan Clark's other closed back headphone. I do think this one looks better. I like the way this thing looks. They did a really good job with this. But sound-wise, I don't love it. And it's kind of interesting because let's pull up the graph, all right? So this is my frequency response of the E3. I've got this on squig.link if you want to check it out, link in the description down below. And you might expect the fact that I don't like the Stealth and I do like the E3, that the frequency responses would be drastically different. But frankly, they're not. So here's the Stealth, and maybe I should pull them up alongside each other so you can kind of see how close these two headphones really are. Why do I got two colors that look almost the same? There you go. They're not too far different in terms of frequency response. Like maybe you could say that the 3K region on the E3 is a little bit overly forward versus the Stealth, and maybe you could say that the Stealth is a little bit boxier here in the lower mids. Maybe both of those things are what's contributing to the difference in sound, but I don't think it's just that. The Stealth, honestly, this guy just comes across super, super congested to me. I don't get it. And the bass presentation, despite the fact that it even measures with a little bit more bass than what I get from the E3, this just sounds like it has no bass. This sounds like a mids-only headphone that is super congested, and I don't get it. Like I heard this again. I heard it at CanJam maybe 6 months ago. I don't know. Actually, this one I heard about a year and a half ago, and my impression was like, for real, $4,000? I don't get it, and that was why my expectations for the E3 were, I don't know, kind of low. But this thing is just, it has none of those problems. I don't understand exactly why, but that would be my general thoughts on how that thing compares to the Stealth. But how about versus the Expanse, which is the open back version of the Stealth, effectively, also $4,000. And yes, this one is an open back, although it's not the most open of open backs, but it is. If you put it on my head, let's put it on my head. A little puck fell out. So there is a little bit of isolation here. It's not as open as something like a Hyphaman, but it's definitely more open than the E3. And yet, I think the E3 does actually a better job of that separation between sounds and that definition between all the instruments and the placement and stuff like that. I think this one actually does a better job. Now, I will say I like this better than the Stealth, significantly better than the Stealth, and that of the three, this one has the most bass. And in fact, we can kind of show you that in a graph. We'll pull up the Expanse, and you can see that the Expanse here in, all right, we'll make it red so you can actually see it. The Expanse in red has significantly more bass, and I think in listening impression that does for sure come across. And maybe I could even say that it has the best bass. I think I would. I think the Expanse has slightly more tactile bass than something like the E3. But apart from that, I actually still prefer the sound of the E3. You can kind of see up here that the bass on the Expanse is pretty relaxed, especially versus the E3. I don't know if this is the only thing that is making this difference, but I really do feel like the E3 versus the Expanse just does a much better job of, again, that micro contrast and that detail, whereas the Expanse can still come across a little bit congested. Not as congested as the Stealth, but a little congested nonetheless, which is interesting. Now, one thing that is notable is that I can get a pretty significantly different sound from this headphone. This is how I'd normally wear it, but if I push it back so that my ears are toward the front of the cups, I can actually bring out a little bit of extra brightness in the tune. And that does help with that stereo separation and, you know, distinction between sounds. But one, I still don't think it brings it up to the point of competing with the E3. And two, it's just not comfortable. Like, that's not how I wear a headphone. So, well, there you go. So yeah, between these two headphones, again, despite this thing being half the price of the Expanse, and despite this being a closed back versus an open back, and I'm generally much prefer open back headphones, I think the E3 is a significantly better headphone than the Expanse, and a significantly better headphone than the Stealth. And yeah, that was why I wanted to do just kind of a quick and dirty review of the Dan Clark E3. Out of 5 stars, we're going to give this, you know what, let's give scores to these other headphones first. And this might not be the kindest. Oh, hold on, actually, how do I do this? I'm new here. Let's do the Stealth. Out of 5 stars, does this work? That works. I don't think this is a very good headphone. I think you can find better headphones for much cheaper. 2 stars out of 5 for the Stealth for me. The Expanse, this one's better, but I'll be honest, I'm still not very excited about it. I'll give this guy 3 stars out of 5. This is a solid headphone, I suppose, but I don't know. I don't think it's super competitive at the price point. So there's that. And then there is the Dan Clark Audio E3, the headphone that we are here for, the headphone that I felt I needed to do some content on before I sent it back to Scott. And this guy, I'm gonna give it 5 stars out of 5. I love this headphone. In fact, I want one of these headphones. It's $2,000, so I probably won't have one anytime soon, but this is a very good headphone. If you've got $2,000, you are looking for the best closed back out there. I have not heard anything nearly as good as this in the closed back realm. Love the build quality. Don't necessarily love the aesthetic, but we can get past that. And yeah, 5 stars out of 5. If you're interested in checking this thing out, I do have it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you like this video, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and I'll catch you on the next super review. Again, another shout out to Scott Pledger. We'll catch you later.